Welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation with me, your host, Owen James, the channel that brings you your team every day, guys. First of all, a bit of an apology, guys. If you can hear snoring in the background, that is my dog. My 4-year-old lab is just literally there. He is fast asleep at this moment in time and he's snoring his head off. I don't know why. Maybe he's got a cold. I don't know. There we go. So anyway, please obviously excuse the snoring if you can hear snoring in the background. Right, let's talk a little bit of what's going on at the club. We'll talk about Philippe Clement. We're going to talk about reasons why he won't be sacked, and it's not the obvious reason. The payoff, I don't think, is a genuine issue. We'll talk about why. We'll look at the form of Rangers this season in terms across all competitions, how that looks like on a combined basis. And we're also going to have a little look ahead to our game against FCSB. Yes, that's right. It's not a federal agency. It's not a branch off of the FBI. It is FC Stoya Bucharest. I believe that is why it's called FCSB, a team rather bizarrely run, controlled, and in-game managed by its owner. I mean, Jesus, could you imagine it? Douglas Park picking the team and making the substitutions. I'll tell you something at the moment, you probably wouldn't do any worse. Jesus. Anyway, look, Philippe Clement talked ostensibly, didn't he, about the synergy between fans and players and the fans and the team. I think that synergy is all but gone at this point, and there's a general level of despair amongst the fan base, a real, negative feeling towards the team, a negative feeling towards the direction the club is heading in. And I think, overall, there is a real fear for the future of this club in terms of its ability to obviously contend with our near neighbours. But we've talked a lot about the reasons why Clement is struggling. The fact that he is stubborn, the fact that he won't change his shape, the fact that he has no style, he has no shape, he has no formation. His tactics are poor, his in-game management is poor, his substitutions are poor. His plan B seems to be to do plan A, but with different players in different positions. So, I mean, it all doesn't work. It doesn't add up. And I think it kind of brings home to roost a little bit what the Monaco fans were saying to us when he was appointed. They kind of cited all these reasons: stubbornness, inability to be flexible, doesn't change, picks his favorite. It's all just the same thing over and over again, isn't it? And it's a bit of a sad state of affairs. It really genuinely is. And I mean, I've backed him up to this point, but I've reached a point now where looking at him, reevaluating what's going on, rewatching a lot of the games and looking at the way we play, the guy's just not got it. The guy just cannot and does not have a brain for Scottish football or for British football. I think equally he would struggle in the English leagues as well. I think the time really has come for him to go. Now, people have cited a number of reasons. I mean, people said he needs more time. Well, why does he need more time? I don't think he's going to make any difference whatsoever to this team, even if we brought in Kylian Mbappe, Jude Bellingham, Trent Alexander-Arnold, and I don't know, let's say, who's the best centre-back in the world at the moment? Someone like, for example, perhaps Gabriel from Arsenal, and maybe, I don't know, Edison or David Raya as goalkeeper, and we put Victor Gyökeres, the goal machine, up front. I still don't think this team would do any better with him as the manager. I think we're in a position where we are no better than we were 12 months ago. When Michael Beale lost his job on that October day when we lost to Aberdeen, I genuinely don't see any progress there. I don't see this team looking any better. Yes, we had the initial new manager bounce, but since that day, it's been pretty appalling. Clement, for me, has lost the team. He's lost the fans, and it takes a lot to get that back. Now, people also cite the fact that he would get a huge payoff from the club if he was going to be sacked, and we can't afford that payoff. Now, I've actually read some information, and I'm not talking about the Record article by Tam McManus. I'm talking about other bits and pieces that I've found out from talking to people who actually know what they're talking about. When it comes to managerial contracts these days, clubs are becoming a lot smarter with these deals. Now, obviously, our board do have a growing level of incompetence, so there is a doubt there. But, when Clement was given the extension to 2028, people believe this made him unsackable because of the fact it's 4 years. We can't afford 4 years' wages, etc., etc. However, I highly doubt that Clement would get 4 years' wages if he was sacked. I believe that it would be somewhere between 6 to 18 months of wages rather than the full 4-year payoff. Often now what is happening is teams are putting into managers' contracts that there is a penalty clause if they're sacked, that if they're sacked for poor performance, that it would be only a 12-month payoff, or it would be a 6-month payoff, or an 18-month payoff. It would certainly not be a full term of the contract payoff. And obviously that will depend on where they are in their contract. If they've entered the last 6 months of their contract and they're sacked, obviously they're not going to get a 12-month payoff. They would just get that last 6 months, etc., etc. So it's believed that there is actually a clause in Clement's contract whereby Rangers would not have to pay the full 4 years of his deal if he was sacked, meaning that is not an issue, that there is no issue there whatsoever if it comes down to the fact that he is sacked. Now, I believe, honestly, that he will survive at least until January, possibly till the end of the season. There's a number of reasons why I believe this. I think if it's January that he's got rid of, it'll be because he's lost to Celtic again. And I think if he does lose to Celtic and Aberdeen, I think his position will be utterly untenable. If we get to the cup final, it's a big if, and we lose to them again, it's a big if. They might not get to the cup final, but it's highly doubtful. I do honestly believe that as a club, we will be in a position where we have to sack him. Any manager who cannot beat Celtic is next to useless, and is absolutely no use to Rangers whatsoever. So, I think a defeat and also not beating them at Ibrox, I include a draw in that as being not acceptable as well. So, look, I think if that happens, then he could be sacked. Now, I think what is saving Clement at this moment in time from any decisions, and actually will save him even if we were to lose to Stoya, beat St Mirren, and then lose to Aberdeen, would be the fact that there is no CEO, there is no chairman. Interim chairmen don't tend to sack managers. There isn't, I don't think, there is not a controlling stake there. There is not a big enough stake there to actually move and to sack him. I think the lack of direction, the lack of control at the top of this club is quite frightening. Other people have said, the argument is that you can't just keep sacking managers. Well, yes, you can if they're shit. You don't just keep someone in a job because you sacked the previous person. If they cannot do their job and they are no good at their job, you don't keep them. You look at real life, guys, and football is, at the end of the day, has to come into the lines with real life. If you're no good at your job, you will get sacked. It's a fact. Whether or not, they've sacked the person before you as well. You've got to obviously have someone in the job who is capable of doing the job. Just because the last two managers were not good enough, that says more about the recruitment strategies. That says more about the ability of this board to recruit a decent manager, not about the managers. It does say a lot about the fact that this board obviously, couldn't identify a decent manager if one bit them on the nose and said, "Here I am." So look, there is that obviously that concern. Look, Clement, I think, will eventually be sacked. I don't see him turning this around. I think it's gone too far. There's some absolute, damning statistics. I was reading an article by, Johnny McFarlane, who the Hibs fan, Johnny McFarlane, who I don't have a lot of time or respect for. And, he was talking about the XG over 90 minutes for Celtic compared to Rangers is not even close. It is an absolute gulf between the two teams. And this title race is very, 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 very finished in terms of the form of the two teams and the talent on the two teams. And I think that's reflective. And I think a lot of people have said, and I think we've all got to admit that realistically Rangers aren't going to win anything this season. With Philippe Clement as manager, it just isn't going to happen. The guy is utterly clueless. You look at the form of Rangers over this season, and it's, you tell me where for a Rangers manager 57% is an acceptable win percentage. It just isn't. That's across all competitions. That's across the Europa League, the League Cup, and the league. So we've played 14 games in total this season. We've won 8 of them. We've drawn 2 of them. We've lost 4. So we've lost half as many as we've won. We've actually, drawn or lost 6 out of the 14. So 43% of the games have ended in not positive results, 57% wins. It's only just over 50%. It just tips over 50%. Had one of those wins gone into a draw, then the win percentage would be at 50%, which for any manager is absolutely unacceptable. That's Pedro Caixinha, Paul Le Guen style numbers. I think both of them were around 55, 56% when they were sacked. So, that is a pretty appalling record from Philippe Clement. It's an absolutely damning record. We've scored 21 goals in 14 games, which is under 2 goals a game, which for a Rangers team playing in a league as we do, where we've got some very weak teams, I mean, and if you take out as well that 6 of those goals came against one team, that's 15 goals in 13 games. That is pretty poor. 12 goals conceded, so that's not too bad. The defensive record isn't terrible, but overall, that is a pretty damning indictment. That is not at all a good reflection. And obviously, we were dumped out of the Champions League to a very, very poor Dynamo Kiev team, as was shown by RB Salzburg, who now cannot buy a win anywhere. They are a team that is really struggling, yet they absolutely smashed Dynamo Kiev, a team that kind of made us look ordinary at the end of the day. Look, I genuinely believe that there is no grounds on which this man can keep his job. I mean, like I said, the payoff is now not an issue. The facts and figures in terms of his performance this season are appalling. He's, the eye test, he doesn't pass either. The team plays some of the most awful, boring football. And I was talking to my good friend Sarah McGeechan the other day, and she was saying that, she spoke to her dad who went to the game, and the dad's been a Rangers fan for over 50 years. And he said that this is one of the worst Rangers teams he's ever seen in his entire life. And I've got to say, I'm hearing this on an increasing basis from a lot of fans who've been fans for over 50 years. A lot of them, fans between over 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, saying to me, this is the worst Rangers team they can remember. It is genuinely a poor team and not a pleasure to watch at all. So, we have reached kind of a crossroads. And I think, like I said, the thing that is saving him at the moment is the lack of a CEO and the lack of a chairman. The fact that this is a ship just adrift in the sea. Look, we play FCSB on Thursday, and I mean, to some extent, this is a game that we need to be winning, because the fact we've obviously got an even record now in the Europa League. We've won one. We were absolutely smashed by Lyon. Steaua Bucharest have had a perfect start to their Europa League campaign, a win against the Latvian Minnows and a win over PAOK. I mean, they haven't played particularly good teams either to this point. They're 6th in their league. They're not doing particularly well in the league at the moment, this moment in time. And many people feel they could actually field a somewhat weakened team against Rangers. And to concentrate on their league form. But look, whatever happens, it's a game where, in a way, this one and the St Mirren game on the weekend, just a win is not enough. Just a win is not enough. It has to be a performance. We have to start to see players gelling, players playing some good football. To me, Philippe Clement has got to take a risk. He's got to take a gamble. He is a dead man walking. He is drinking in the last chance saloon. And he's got to kind of throw away his stubbornness, throw away his favoritism, and kind of think, right, this is a risk. I've got to win this game. Now, to some extent, yes, he is hamstrung by the caliber of players he can pick. One, by injuries, by the fact that Oscar Cortez and Ridvan are out, by the fact that some of the players are just simply not good enough. And it's going to be a case of putting a round peg in a round hole. And that round peg might not fit that hole very well, but it's got to be done because there is literally nothing else at this point in time. I want to see him go to a 4-3-3. I think playing with a 10 doesn't work. It hasn't worked. There is no fluidity to this team. There is no talent to this team. Now, that may change on Saturday when Yanis Hadji is eligible for selection. Obviously, he's completed his suspension now. He can't play on Thursday because he's not on the Europa League squad, but he is in the league squad and can play on Sunday. So I would, we could actually go back to having a 10 with Hadji on Sunday, and I think it could work given Hadji's talent. Catanweirjo's got to start a right back. I'm sorry, but James Tavernier cannot start another game. The man is absolute dog shite. Yes, he is not the main problem at Rangers, but he is one of the big problems at this club. His inability to defend, his numbers have dropped off, and his leadership is just non-existent. The guy is an absolute embarrassment to himself and to this club. I wouldn't even call him a man anymore, because if he was man enough, he would go to the manager and say, look, coach, I'm not doing the job. I'm not playing well. Take me out the firing line. Take me out the firing line. Put someone else in there because I'm letting myself down. I'm letting the team down. If he had any courage, he clearly doesn't. James Tavernier is a coward. Catanweirjo, for me, has to start a right back. The guy is by far the best right back we've got at the club. He's done it at an international level. He's looked good whenever he's coming on. Yes, he made that one mistake in the last game, which Philippe Clement, called him out over, which he would never have done to Tav, his precious little Tav. Suter and Balogun, I would start. Proper's been appalling. Proper is a proper disaster. I think Clement's got to cut his losses, admit that we've made a mistake there, and put Balogun in. Balogun is by far the better defender. He's quality. He really is. I would make Balogun the captain because the guy's a leader. He doesn't shut. He doesn't hide. He doesn't shrink away from a challenge. That's who I put in. Hiefte on the left. Midfield flat 3. Dio, yes, hasn't played well, but who else is there? You don't want Dowell there. And he ain't going to play the kids. So it's got to be Dio, Barron, and I think Raskin's got to come back into the team, because for me, Raskin actually played well against St Johnstone, then was dropped inexplicably for the next game, which made no sense to me. So Raskin for me in that flat three. Bajrami and Cheney behind Hamza. Put Hamza up top. There's nothing to lose, guys. Dessers is an absolute joke in Europe. The guy couldn't hit a cow's arse with a banjo in Europe. He is appalling in Europe. Give Hamza a run out. I mean, he can't do any worse than Dessers. I mean, let's face it. I mean, my 70-year-old mum couldn't do any worse than Dessers. I mean, genuinely couldn't. So Cheney and Bajrami for me behind him. Give them a bit of license to float, to get inside. Let the fullbacks create the width. Try and do something different. Just try something different to change it up a little bit, because what they're doing at the moment is not working. It isn't working. And I'd love to see some of the kids get a go. I'd love to see Rice or McKinnon or Robbie Fraser or Zach Lovelace get a go, but they're not going to, are they? Let's deal with real world issues here. They genuinely aren't going to get it. So, look, that's what I do. Something different. Just try something different, because what's working now isn't working. Starting Dessers up front isn't working. The guy hasn't scored in 5 games. Playing James Tavernier, who is probably the worst footballer in the SPL at the moment, is not working. And as Einstein said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Clement's doing that at the moment. He's being insane. Right, guys, I'd love to know your thoughts on what we've covered this morning. Thank you so much for watching Glasgow Rangers Nation, guys. Look, people are going to flag me off for calling Tav a coward and saying that he's not man enough to go to the manager. I don't care anymore. Look, I'm calling this out. I'm saying it as I say it. If you don't like it, don't watch. Fuck off. I don't care. I want the best for this team. All I want is this team to win. If you don't like it, I don't care. I genuinely couldn't give a toss if you don't like it. Thank you for watching. As always, guys, on the way out, please smash the sub, ring the bell, smash the like, do a share, drop a comment, do whatever you need to do, guys. Absolutely fantastic that you take part, that you contribute. Brilliant. It's been fantastic, guys, the last couple of days. Thank you for watching. And as always, remember, we are the people.